Thank you for joining us, fellow community. We have another tool talk for us today. And today we're joined by Pardhu from Metaphor. He's going to talk to us a little bit about data cataloging and how Metaphor is kind of changing the game in that space. So I kind of pass it over to him and let him kind of take the reins and drive the tool talk. So welcome, Pardhu.
Thanks, Stephen, for the warm intro and having me present, giving me this opportunity to present what we are building, what we have learned in the past few years, building data catalog a couple of times. So for the benefit of this particular community, I've put a short version of hey, what definitely the data analysts and the analytical engineers and the data engineering people, they have seen bunch of catalogs or at least have heard about it. It is quite familiar topic. So I have structured my talk today to more in direction of what's the differentiating thing we are really doing, so I'll keep it limited in terms of the basic features of hey, you can have lineage, you can search. This is quite familiar for everyone. So let me talk and take it to the next level, why these catalogs usually fail, or what we have built has failed in the past, and what did we learn out of it, and what we are building right now. Sounds good. All right, let me share my screen quickly. All right. So just to introduce, for this talk, Metaphor, as you introduced, is a data catalog, but we think of it as actually really a social platform for data. It's not a simple, it's a modern data catalog, but it is completely boosted by AI and most importantly, supercharged by people, right? Why these two are such an important thing, I'm gonna explain a bit more in my talk today. So for today's talk, I have structured it with my quick introduction, my background, and what led to really creating Metaphor as a company, and what is that we are really building, and just conclude it there, just a very simple agenda. I am formally introducing myself. I am Pardhu Gunnam. I am CEO and co-founder of Metaphor Data. Before creating Metaphor, I have worked extensively on data platforms at AWS and LinkedIn for a long time. And I have also started working on and building something very similar to DBT, in fact, called Unified Metrics Platform at LinkedIn. And it was very well adopted. Every single business metric was computed out of it. And in fact, I'm proud to say all the key metrics you see on LinkedIn's platform itself, employee counts or how many the view stats, etc. All of these are kind of powered by the same one single platform, which is what we built. So then eventually from there, I moved to lead the metadata team at LinkedIn. And when in 2016, 2017, LinkedIn was also looking at GDPR kind of initiatives, compliance related initiatives, CCPA, etc. So they have they went and take a deeper look at the catalog, what they have, etc. And rebuilt, created a metadata team to kind of rethink this whole aspect about metadata and data catalogs. And that's how I got an opportunity to build up that team ground up. And as a part of that, we created a metadata platform called Data Hub. So I'm extremely proud to say that I'm one of the co-creators along with my other co-founders, the Data Hub project, open source project. And that inspired us to kind of understand what is the gap in the industry, what is the gap in struggles of a lot of data operators to kind of interact with the data. How can organizations take advantage of the metadata to take their data management to the next level? So that's what inspired us to kind of create Metaphor. So today I'm gonna talk a little bit about hey, what did we learn of creating Data Hub? Why did we even have to create? Why did we not buy? And essentially what is that thing which we learned? Where Data Hub through Data Hub, what's still the gaps and what are we fixing today? So that's the story about Metaphor, how the origin of it, why it started. But let me quickly switch to the slideshow part just to understand, talk to you about hey, rethinking why we had to rethink catalog. So initially, this is I've broken it into 3 stages, how we have totally evolved a technical a catalog, right? Which we had at home in-house at LinkedIn, and what are the learnings out of each one, and why we had to evolve into what we have right now. So initially we had a technical catalog, right? This is, if you think about it, most of the catalogs in 5-6 years ago used to be just the technical catalogs, right? You still have some examples of that, like like maybe Unity catalog recently from Databricks, or the Glue from like Amazon, and all these examples, like, or the older versions like Informatica catalogs or Colibras, like when they originally came, they're pure technical catalogs, right? So what it used to be is just like connect all your data assets, because you have too many data assets inside your company, be it data sets or be it dashboards or APIs, like, hey, what are all the things, right? Can I see all of them in one place? And if at all, if they're connected, what is the technical lineage between these two, etc. So, right, this was the original idea, and we have done this as well. And what we have learned is it is very helpful for the data team or the core data team or engineering team to understand, like, see all of it in one place, search it and find it. But whenever we expose it to the end user, like, which is typically a business user or so, who is interacting with the data, they always miss the business context, right? Hey, I need to first understand technical information, like, which table, what's the schema, which is the column, etc., to find it. That's when this catalog is useful. But if I have to define the business context or think from a business context, I have to like still define Confluent pages, or the definitions are like coming out from somewhere else. So then that was a good learning. So then what we said, okay, catalog as such is technical catalog is not sufficient. So let's actually also add business context. So we brought in things like business glossaries, metrics, KPIs, etc., to kind of like define those things and start linking them to the technical assets, right? Like, for example, saying, oh, you have a business metric, like, for example, engagement metric or revenue metric. How is this computed? What table is it coming from? What are the aggregates? What are the real-time tables? Or if you want like historic analysis, which should you do? Like all these kind of things, right? Or which is the standardized dashboards, etc. So all of this was quite helpful for the business people to understand this and like and collocate, like and understand the link between the data and things and stuff, right? So we thought, okay, this solved all the problems, and we released it and gave demos across the company and things and stuff. People looked at it, appreciated, because it was, compared to what it was previous, it is still like a lot of improvement. This is what most of the catalogs right now are, right? Like most of the catalogs added that business context. You will always see an aspect about all the technical lineage, etc., but also the business context, like, for example, metrics, business glossaries, data dictionaries, all of these things were present. Then what we realized were people were still coming to Slack. People were still coming to like Jira, like opening Jira tickets, Agnostas for support or asking questions. Like that traffic didn't really go down. And still like the as expected, like the data catalog adoption across the organization didn't take out like as much as what we wanted. The power users are coming, like the deep like data analysts, like some of them who are like understand data very well, the business very well, they are able to kind of leverage it on things, but not the end users, right? Like how to on a day-to-day basis. So when we went and asked them, hey, what's happening? Why are you not able to use it and things and stuff? They said, and like we observed like what are the patterns of the kind of questions they are finding, or why are they still coming back for support into the Slack, or what is missing, right? Like when we analyzed, the aspect which we missed was this is still like very much like, think of it like a Wikipedia kind of a thing, right? Like if someone has written once and like and published it and things and stuff, so you kind of like have some trust in it and things, but there is always questions beyond it, right? Like for example, interesting thing about data is not the like data itself, like, but how you actually use it, right? There are questions about, always, it's never about a single column, right? Hey, well, how can I do this? Or can I do this for this use case versus that use case? What's the difference? Or I'm finding 2-3 tables, what is that I can use in my organization, right? Or like, for example, what a customer success team is interested is very different than how a sales team might use it or like define it and etc., right? So that contextual information about that groups or how their teams are using, that is not happening inside this catalog. So people started like creating either separate wikis or separate like conversations inside Slack or things and stuff. And that is one aspect. And the second aspect was the level of friction that is associated with this catalog, right? Initially, we kept it as, oh, this is like kind of a blessed data or like blessed information. So everything has to be like heavily reviewed. Like obviously you don't want anyone to come and say that, oh, this is the accepted metric like from random Joe to kind of like define it. Like you want it to be like well vetted and approved by data governance team or that group like data steward, etc. Like all of that was what the metadata you captured so far, right? So, but there were always questions on, hey, this is how can I tell about how am I using it, or how our team is using it, etc. Like that contextual information was always like captured somewhere else. And in order for them to add anything into catalog, there was a lot of friction. They don't want to think about like doing documentation. They want to like when they're actually using the data and all, they don't want to switch and do conversation somewhere else and things and stuff, right? So those things kind of like gave us a deeper understanding of like the gap of defining a governed catalog alone versus we don't versus like building something like bottoms up, like, hey, how do people actually use it on a day-to-day basis and how can it contribute to governance? We thought like we took a deeper look and we thought that it has to be a hybrid approach. There has to be governed information because this is your source of truth, but at the same time there should be also like people should be able to kind of contribute and use it for day-to-day usage and like contribute back, etc. easily, right? So what we did was the most important piece, we added the social context on top of the catalog, right? So we brought in, they kind of also took up the governance and broke it down into pieces and said that, hey, some pieces come from the govern team, which is like a company level or a group level policies, what you enforce on things. But there is also very much localized governance, like between like how a group wants to organize, like sales team or customer success team or marketing team, like, or any of these like biz product like organizations and things. How can they contribute? How can they own some parts of it and like make the catalog more practical, right? Like an operational in that perspective. And the beauty of it is once we started bringing in these localization aspects, we also brought in the people aspect, right? Like made people, along with just talking in terms of data and assets or dashboards, business, we also brought people into picture, right? Like, hey, what does Pardhu care about? What does Steven care about? What is this role like a data analyst care about? What's important? So that level of personalization, that level of like customization to a particular group, like kind of helped us to think about holistically, like what is data, what are the business using it for, and who is using it, what are the people associated with it as well, right? So this is the fundamental evolution of like, I think what we learned from what's a failure with catalogs and why they why they lack adoption across organization, how they are like a bit impractical, and that changed our game completely. So the aspects which we built today and things and stuff, from once we start thinking from this perspective, have made it, I believe, that made the catalog more practical and like usable, like, and maintainable, like to most of all, like maintainable without requiring huge governance teams or data stewards and things, which is not practical these days, right? Like which is not very common for every organization. So from those learnings, we all stepped out, and 3 years ago, like the co-founders, the team primarily came from like LinkedIn, where we created Data Hub. So the main contributors came out and created Metaphor, and like later we have like definitely added like great members to the team. One of them is our head of product, came from a company called StreamSets, which was a big player on the ETL side for sure. Right. And we well funded, like through like we got like support from A16Z, Amplify, Point72, like very well reputed investors as well. So I want to talk to you like now that I talked where we came from, like, and what we have built. Like I want to just show you what is Metaphor really, what is that we have built now, and why this is important, right? What you're seeing here, yes, Metaphor is a social platform for data, like not a simple data catalog. We expect this to be for for every data users, like kind of a landing page to think about like all the actions about the data. This is how is aggregated, and you can kind of like, we provide you as like a hub and spoke model. You can always like start your journey here, and you can go to what is required and jump into the necessary tools. Like for example, you want to take it to find the data and then think about interacting with it in dbt, interacting with it in like, let's say, Snowflake or your query consoles or like notebooks, Power BI, anything. You can always like expand and like from here and like and dig deeper. But this will always like aggregate and present you a simpler interface to kind of like interact with. What you're seeing here, a nice web interface, which is much familiar to you, right? Like these days, like instead of saying, hey, this is all the schemas, these are the tables, like login and things and stuff, it is already giving you, like based on identifying who you are, what are you interested, what are you associated with, what your past history, where you have queried and things. It is giving you updates in terms of like very familiar format, which is like posts and like very similar to LinkedIn feed, right? Posts in terms of what has the data changed, or someone asking you a question, or a data quality issue that has been reported on one of the dashboards which you actively follow, or things and stuff, right? All those things are like kind of pushed to you in a very familiar format. And similar to what we have learned in the best out of the social platforms and things, giving you more discovery through what is trending, like what is others in your similar roles using, or what are they querying it, and what are the queries they have built, like which unpublished recently successfully, like for use cases. All those things are like available right and then and there itself. Then we also, the idea behind Metaphor was to kind of like not just build and expect everyone to come to the platform, but also really break down the concept of catalog and make it available everywhere, right? It's kind of like omnipresent, like it is aggregated into the web platform, but it is also pushed into, like, for example, if you are interacting with data, right? When you when you are not even thinking about, oh, I need to find data, or I need to ask a question, or if there was I should check who thinks like I need to check data catalog first if there was a data quality issue. Like no one thinks about that like explicitly unless they see a problem with the report. So we brought the catalog directly into the reports, through a browser extension, into the reports dashboards, or any of your notebooks or query consoles, who are like, for example, Snowflake console and things. Anything you are using, you can always interact through the Metaphors extension. And Metaphor will automatically identify what's the context, what you are using, and provide you the necessary information there, which is very, very relevant to that particular data set. Instead of like it's not just a simple search to like a search bar or search extension where you have to search your own and find all the information. It kind of pushes the information towards you, similar to like what we have seen in like a lot of social platforms as well. And the third one is our extensive presence inside your collaborative platforms, right? Like, for example, Slack and Teams. When we talk about collaboration, like a lot of people have explicitly thought about, oh, let's build all the collaboration in the web tool, right? Like, for example, like, hey, we also have some aspects of it. You can comment and interact on things, but that's not restricting you to come and do everything inside Metaphor platform, right? So you can naturally have any conversations what you're having in your Slack channels and Teams and things. You don't have to do any context switch. You can directly interact with Metaphor then and there itself, and capture, like, either understand what is the lineage, what's the things, and like important information from a catalog, or also contribute back, right? Like, oh, I think this is important for others to know. And with one click, you can actually push back and to Metaphor's platform. And so that is available for all your users and things. So we took a typical interactions, understood where that friction points are, and like can completely like smoothened it out so that everyone feels easy to interact with the catalog and like leverage it. At the same time, they feel empowered to kind of like contribute back, right? And making the catalog more organically like maintainable, right? Like on from a day-to-day basis, like, and thinking of like making it a live product rather than like a passive product like a wiki or something like that. Yeah. So in today, like, I want to talk about three aspects, which is how do you find data, like how we made changes in that aspect, and how do you understand, like, if you find something, how do you understand, like, what are the social signals that come around, or how do you interact with the posts and things and stuff. And the third one is actually how do you collaborate, right? Like inside these tools or inside Slack, inside your browser plugin, how do you interact with Metaphor seamlessly without requiring you to always context switch into something else as well. All right, this is a good time for me to kind of like switch to the actual demo itself. So let me start with Slack, right? Like maybe that's the most interesting thing. Take any data channel. I think this is which we are familiar with it. Like people do announcements there, like, oh, this is changing, or this metric has been updated, don't use this data. Like we have seen this like very common, not only at like LinkedIn, but we have done like a lot of customer interactions and things, this is a very common practice. There is one popular analytics channel or a teams, like a data team channel, where you push all the information out there. And then the biggest problem with this is, yes, initially you tell everyone that like, look out for this channel and things and stuff, and people come and ask questions and things, your team feels active and answers this. But the biggest challenge is you either if you are answering questions, you again keep on repeating that answers. Like some people, like with variations of the things, they keep on asking the same set of questions which you have answered in the past. Either you end up like searching in the history or scrolling or pointing them to something like that. That's one problem. And second thing is, even if you do want to push information, like, and say that, hey, I'm changing this like announcement or the data is done, it is just like noise. There are too much notifications and things and stuff like happening in Slack. People ignore it, right? You posted it somewhere, it just gets lost in the scroll of the search. Yeah, scroll of Slack messages. So what we have done is with Metaphor in presence, like first of all, we understand like all the information, what's your contextual, what has been discussed and things and stuff, and what is your catalog, what is your technical information, all these things like is captured. So with Metaphor, first of all, you can like change the game around like searching and asking for questions, right? Like instead of you asking and someone responding, with Metaphor bots, like let you ask questions in very natural language, right? Instead of even knowing that technical, you don't even have to know the technical terms or business terms. You can just ask like what comes to your natural mind, right? Where can I find this dashboard, or how is this metric computed, etc. So what Metaphor does, with definitely the integration with our LLMs, it looks at all your metadata. It looks at all your like previous conversations and things, you have answered and what you have captured, all the business documentation, etc., and like composes like a very human readable like summary information of like, hey, this is what you're asking for, and this is the best answer what I can find. But you don't believe just in me and things, and so this is not the only source of truth. I've composed it based on these are the best 3 resources or 4 resources what I have found, and linking to various types of assets, right? Like for example, this is the data set which I found, or this is a dashboard, this is the business definition, etc. Like you can kind of distribute it, etc., across these things. Now you have like reduced it, I can like make it like more interactive, so your support level kind of like goes down, and people try to directly use it without requesting explicitly in channel and things. That noise goes down. You can totally ask like, hey, but someone has to maybe first write documentation and things and stuff about it. What is that? But that is still a hurdle. So what Metaphor does is absolutely right. Like, so it will look at like all your documentation. It can answer a few things, but over a period of time, it will also help you to easily build that muscle around, like build that like capability to answer these questions easily. If there was ever a conversation which is about like data, or you have answered someone this same question manually, you can totally take any conversation and just say, hey, push it to Metaphor. With one click, what it does is it will take any conversation and like creates a post out of that. And in creating the post as well, like the biggest challenge was like, hey, how do you easily push it to Metaphor? And second thing, you don't want to push like entire conversation, like which is like very clumsy back and forth threads, etc. So typically you will see like a lot of information in there, right? So Slack took a while to kind of respond, but what it does is it will take the entire conversation and you can ask the AI to quickly summarize it into different formats, right? What it does, like, hey, what are the key points out of this entire conversation? AI, like LLM, will like try to understand all of it and like summarize the key points or summarize like the synopsis, or you can like push it as it is, like pointing to the original conversation, etc. But the beauty of it is once you translate this and I can push it into Metaphor, you'll always have the link to the original Slack thread where it is coming from. And as a human, like you always have a control on like what is the AI telling you, like, and summarizing. It'll only boost your like productivity, like it will only help you to summarize it easily, but you don't have to like rely only on the AI to answer all the questions. So it helps you to kind of like take out all the manual work of documentation and simplify it and capture it easily. So once you do this again, these conversations which you pushed on things were available everywhere else as well, right? Like this about the data, it is getting attached to a single data set, right? Like for example, a Snowflake table or a DBT model, you can attach it. Hey, this is about that model. This is about the dashboard. So they will appear. What you are seeing here is a Snowflake table, for example, in Metaphor. They will appear in Metaphor like this post, which is coming from Slack. Hey, these are questions, and this is the conversation which it came from, etc. These are how the posts appear. So whenever someone next time asks a question in Slack or in web platform, anything, like Metaphor actually looks at these conversations as well, also answer those things much better. So the more you train, like, and more you have conversations, or more and more like metadata that gets updated from your systems, this search metaphors like responses like become much more intelligent and precise as well. So this is the Slack part. So we have seen how the interactions, like, and how it reduces your support channels, etc., in any channels, and how do you capture the information, right? So let's take a look at like what's the web platform looks like, right? So what you're seeing here is a Snowflake page, a clean bike rate page. I will not talk to you a lot about like, oh, we have descriptions gone. All these things are like pretty common in any catalog. You will have all those capabilities which are available. And we take it everywhere possible. We always keep in mind that social approach, identifying people as a centerpiece, but also like bringing you the context around like, and who is using it, how often are they using it, what's the relative social significance of this table, like for example, who are all the other people who are using it, what kind of roles are interested, etc. All of this information is presented to you. But along with that, we also show you like extensive end-to-end lineage across the platforms. This is all computed automatically. What does it mean? We look at like all your Snowflake logs, we look at your Snowflake queries, you look at your DBT definitions, model definitions, etc., like directly integrate with your GitHub, etc. We look at your Power BI, for example. Any system which we touch, we try to understand like much deeper than simple APIs and things. Like we parse the SQL, Power BI SQL, etc., and like try to compute the lineage end to end. So this is like what you get like fully automated out of the box. And even when you're exploring the lineage, etc., you can like dig down on all. This is very common. But the most important thing here is we'll also try to compute like end-to-end column level lineage as well, right? Like because the fact that we are understanding SQL without the platform telling us which column is how it is derived and things. Some platforms do, like Snowflake tell us through some APIs and things, but we also compute it like from DBT. We also compute from Power BI, like how exact Power BI dashboard is computed, from which Snowflake tables, etc. This can be this level of granularity will be available as well, right? When you're understanding a dashboard and like, hey, which data set and etc. That gives you immense like power to track a single metric or a measure in Power BI and understand where is this really coming from. That's column level lineage and things, but practically thinking, right? I was talking to you about when you want to make a change, like how does the social context really come helpful, right? Like, you know that you want to change, you make an announcement and things, but people ignore, right? Like people always miss that important information. Always a countless number of times at LinkedIn, we have sent like much for bigger migrations, we sent emails and things. There, end of the quarter, someone will always come back to us and say that my dashboard broke because of this migration, or I was not aware of this, or I didn't receive this, all these kind of things, right? So what we have done is taken, this information is available, right? We know what data assets are connected, what is getting impacted and all. We also know what are the people that are getting impacted as well. So what we built is a impact analysis with that social context, social awareness. So when you turn that on, you not only see like what are all the dashboards, what are all the data sets that are getting affected downstream of this, but you also see like who are the people associated with it. When I say people, who are the owners of this table, who are the data stewards associated with it, etc. But also who are the users of this table, users of this dashboard, who are viewing it like more frequently. You can take all that information and communicate accordingly, right? So now when you communicate this impact, use this mode of impact analysis, you tell them an exact story, right? Like in terms of, hey, you're not receiving some general update that one Snowflake table is changing or like getting like migrated and all, but you get very pointed contextual update saying that the dashboard which you have been using very frequently, this particular dashboard, its upstream table is impacted and this column is changing. So it might, your measure may not be right. You may need to update this logic or things like you can give like much more precise impact analysis and like notifications to them so that they act like more with more context and they act in like in time, reduces your overhead of this communication, etc. as well. So your migrations or your deprecations, everything will be much more smoother, etc. with this in mind. So this is one aspect, like how we have changed even like anything with the social context, like simply like technical lineage, which existed for a long time, we have modified that. And the interactions with the posts and stuff, we capture like queries, which are most frequently used and help you to kind of like create this golden queries or canned queries out of that like easily, so that like you kind of like start establishing these standard patterns across your organization without like requiring everyone kind of to do their own queries and things and like understand like it's which usually leads to inconsistencies, right? Like they miss a common filter, they miss a common grouping or things, which is or they're doing the group the business logic differently, which leads to like confusions in like in the numbers what they see or the data analysis, etc. So kind of like thinking about like naturally standardizing these practical usage of the data itself and capturing all this context into one place with posts, etc. So one last one I want to talk about, there are a bunch of like interactions and things, but I'll skip all those things. But I want to talk one last thing about how do you collaborate inside your when you're looking at your BI dashboards, etc. as well, right? So assume that like I'm an end user who doesn't know a lot about the data and all these things. I don't really care about how it is created and all. I'm just using this dashboard created by some data analyst for me, right? So there are two challenges, right? One, if you want to communicate to these users as a data analyst, like who created these dashboards and things, you just send like wide emails and things, which might they miss some information, but or they don't know when they're using the dashboard. The second thing, from an end user perspective, if I have a question about this dashboard, I have to like ask my colleagues or find the right person. They keep pointing to the different persons and finally end up like over a point of time the right channel or alias or a Jira ticket, etc. Like different companies use different methodologies to service these people. So we want to kind of like simplify that process as well, right? Let's say you're in Power BI, right? Like or any other browser-based things. Metaphor will directly identify based on which place you are and things and provide that context then and there itself. So what you're seeing on the right hand side here is a metaphor extension which shows you like the description which the owners of this dashboard has added, either in Power BI or in through metaphor if it's more extensive, etc. Or govern tags, who are the contacts, who should I contact for different types of roles, like who is the owner, who is the product manager, etc. All of this. But most importantly, it makes your support extremely easy, right? You can get like start support for various types of information. Like for example, hey, can you please explain me the logic behind this? Or can you point me to, is this coming from Salesforce? What is the provenance of it? Or, oh, can I use this for sharing with customer? Any kind of questions around this, right? You can always ask the owners of this dashboard or the subject matter experts of who knows this thing. Metaphor will help you to kind of like route it easily to those people without requiring you to kind of like figuring it out on your own. So the support, etc., is all in there. If you don't, before even you ask for the support and things, you can also look at like what are all the other questions that came around from others, what have been answered, frequently answered questions, asked questions, etc., or use cases similar to those posts and things. Or I was talking to you about like what are the notices, like if something is getting deprecated, how do you notify those people, etc. All these things will be like persisted in this place as well. So we are taking the typical like important updates happening somewhere else and we're presenting as close as to the actual like usage itself, like of the where you need it, destination itself, which is the dashboard in this case. And we propagate it through lineage and like present all the information in the right way so that you don't have to figure out, oh, I'm getting affected at this dashboard, but like that it is a change happening somewhere in the DBT model, or it's a change happening in somewhere in a Snowflake dashboard, like a data set. All this information is kind of like presented here. So this is the last part I wanted to cover. Just to recap, right? Like, so we looked at like primarily how that social interaction piece and like I'm capturing and changing the catalog from an very boring, like just a technical or a business catalog into an organically maintained social catalog. Social platform for your data is changing, like is the biggest thing I want to talk about. And the biggest outcomes out of this is it is not just the responsibility of governance team to kind of like make the catalog or the data governance to work, right? Like now everyone is participating and like and adopting it and contributing back to the catalog as well. So you know where the pain points are. It gives you a lot of transparency of where you need the support and etc. as well. And for the end users, it's actually helping you to get immediate help, right? Like helping you get immediate support rather than jumping through a lot of like process and like a lot of Jira tickets, etc. as well, right? Like so, it cuts down like a lot of that, lot of that overhead, and provides you that like context then and there itself, like just more practical, higher adoption and more practical usage of catalog, I would say. All right, I think thanks for attending the talk, and you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn or Twitter and visit like metaphor.io for any further, like if you're interested in demos and like and want to chat more about this in general.
Yeah, I was gonna ask where they should find you if they wanted to find you, but you have it listed right there for them. So that's great. So yeah, feel free to connect with Pardhu on LinkedIn, follow him on Twitter, those type of things. If you have any questions about Metaphor or just about data cataloging in general, or just about Pardhu's experience or just the data world in general, feel free to connect with him and send those questions over his way. And I know he'd love to speak to you about Metaphor or anything in the data space in general. And of course, if you're watching this video on YouTube and you have questions just in general, feel free to drop them in the comments below the video, and we'll make sure that we're taking a look at those. And if I see them, I can always toss them over to Pardhu to get him to take a look at them as well. So thank Pardhu. Thank you so much for coming and covering Metaphor quite extensively. That was great. I had a few questions prepared, but you hit them during the talk, so that's always great whenever that happens. So yeah, thank you, and then thank everyone for watching this. Like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below or connect with Pardhu or me on LinkedIn, and feel free to send them our way. And we'll see you on the next Local Optimistic Tool Talk.
Thanks, Steven, for having me here.